Welcome, everyone. As we are co-sponsored by the Rezepkowitz family, in honor of their parents, co-sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Eddie Chazan, L'Refuah Shalema for Shoshana Bas Penina and Simon Bas Rachel, co-sponsored by Binyamin Rivlin, Lili Nishmas Yitzhak Ben Avram Yehuda Levi, co-sponsored by Shelley Zeitlin for his children Eli, Orit, and Ora, by Ber Gol Rasa, L'Refuah Shalema for Moshe Meir Ben Esther Faden, Dov Meir Ben Chai Gittel, and Akros HaTov to the Shir, to Shalom Fogel, by Shalom Fogel, Lili Nishmas Yaakov Zev Ben Yehuda Aryeh, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tivya Miriam Bas Gad, and Yosef Ben Sion Ben Yaakov Zev, that their neshama should have an aliyah. What a beautiful night last night. A night of Anu Amelim Vehem Amelim, and we were Amelim with a daf and a chok last night, so wonderful to have everybody join us on the trip. If you remember, we had a shaila if the child who is the subject of the homosexual relationship has to be over 9, or it's enough over 3. So Rava was the opinion that he has to be over 9. Tani Kavase, I'm saying Rav was the opinion that he has to be over 9, and I should be a good host and welcome in Yaakov Warman and Mo Kushner and Saba and Irving Fishbaum, Nachum Umansky, Dov Solkowitz, Dr. Guy, Reuven Pollack, Marshall Castle, Dr. Black, Shimon Klein, Yisrael Fisher, Nachman Chapler, Yitzi Muller, and Shelley Zeitlin, Eddie Chazan, together with Eddie, who is your friend. Eddie, who's your friend? Mark Frankel, Stephen Holtzman, Ilya Shutman, Rabbi Kranz, Avram Rezepkowitz, Abe Arbach, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg. Now we could hear you, Eddie.
Gedalia Portnoy.
Gedalia Portnoy, it's wonderful to have you. Royal welcome. Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom.
And we welcome in over here in Shul, Berish Gesseman, Gedalia Engel, Chaim Krainer, Michal Avram, Shalom Yehuda, Ruvain Shanet, David Helfgott on Kol HaLashon. As we get ready to learn now, so Tanya Kavasi the Rav, that the boy who is the subject of the homosexuality has to be 9 years old and 1 day. Zocher ben Tesh Shanim B'Yom Echad, a boy who's 9 years old and 1 day, who is the one who is being sodomized, makes the person that sodomizes him chayiv misa. Of course, the boy isn't chayiv misa because the cotton is not a bar einshin. And
where are we holding?
We are now holding on Daf Nun Hey Amid Aleph. Nun Hey, by the way, is a extremely interesting combination. Nun and Hey have no partners, right? Aleph and Tes equals 10, Beis and Ches equals 10, Gimel and Zayin equals 10, Dalet and Vav equals 10. Hey is alone, and Hey plus Hey equals 10. So Hey is alone. And Nun is the same way. Yud and Sadi equals 100, Chaf and Pei equals 100, Lamed and Ayin equals 100, and Mem and Samach equals 100. Nun is alone. And that's Hein Yiras Hashem Hi Chochma. Shekem B'Lashon Yavani Karin Lehina Achas. Hein is one. It's alone. It's unique. And we welcome in Michal Akta. So anyway, the very top line of Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph, Haba'al Behema, if one sleeps with an animal, Bein Kedarka, Bein Shaloi Kedarka, whether in a normal way or in a anal way, V'isha Mavia Esa behema aleha, a woman that brings an animal upon her, bein kedarka, bein shaloi kedarka, whether in the normal way or in an abnormal way, chayiv. However, Dorish Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda, be'isha shnei mishkavos. By a woman, it says mishkavei isha. So that's shnei mishkavos, both in a normal way and in an abnormal way. But by a behema, it doesn't say mishkavei. So by behema, mishkavei echad. So therefore, the Gemara tells us that however, Rav Papa doesn't like this drasha of Rav Nachman Rav Chisda, so we're going to welcome in now Barry Cement joining us, and okay, Barry, it's very good that you're joining us. We needed you for the next demonstration, where a man is going to sleep with himself. We're going to need that very much. I couldn't think of anybody else to demonstrate that with, but
Tell Miriam she'll love that one, Mary.
but Itchy, it's good to have you also. So we just learned that by a woman there's both regular sex and anal sex because it says mishkavei isha. But by a behema that's sodomized by a man, it's only normal because it doesn't say plural by a behema. Maskavla Rapapus, so Rapapus doesn't agree with the logic over here. Adarabba. Isha de urchehi, a woman who bia is normal, amishkav mechayev, we would think that if she has normal bia with an animal, this is talking about an animal, of course with a man, the pasuk says mishkavei isha. But with an animal, as we welcome in A.B. Spry now, Reb Keneal just joining us. A.B. Spry is our 29th Zoomer for the evening, as our numbers are, Baruch Hashem, getting back a little bit to normal after last night's misbehavior. So anyway, the Gemara tells us, Maskul Papa Adrab, Isha de Urchi, a woman where at least bia is normal, amishkav mechayev, it would make sense that she's chayev for a normal bia, amidan achrina loy mechayev, but another type of bia, there's no chiyuv. But behema delav urchi, but an animal, it's not normal for an animal to have bia. L'chayev Allah al kol nekev v'nekev. It would make sense that it should be chayev for each and every opening. So in other words, we're talking about receiving the bia. So in the case of a woman that brings an animal upon her, where bia is normal for a woman, it's normal for a woman to receive. So there it makes sense that it's only in the normal way and not in an abnormal way. But an animal, it's not normal for there to be bia with an animal. For a man to have bia with an animal, I would think that you're chayiv for every orifice. It's all the same. Behema delavarchi l'chayiv alal kol nekev v'nekev. You should be chayiv for every orifice. However, l'maisa is the halacha is not like Rav Nachman bar Chisda, and it's not like Rav Papa, like we learned in the Brisa. Tanya deloy ketravayu zocher ben tesha shana v'yom echad. In order for a man to be chayiv for having a homosexual relationship with a boy, he has to be 9 years and 1 day. Habala behema, and a man who has bishiali bein kedaka bein shaloi kedaka, it's both in the normal way and in the abnormal way, which is not like Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. V'isha mevia as a behema aleha, and likewise a woman that brings an animal on her, bein b'kedaka bein shaloi kedaka, whether in the normal way or an anal way, chayiv, which is not like Rav Papa. Either way, it's chayiv. What? Mouth not. No, that's not considered normal beer. Now, Amalei Ravina L'Rava. Now, penetration, which is called ma'are, or mare, that means that the beer just touches the genital, or it penetrates a drop, but there's no ejaculation. The question is so by adultery, Mara counts. That's considered, Tchilas Bia is considered a Bia. The question is, what about initial penetration by homosexuality? Hama'ora b'zuchur mahu. What happens if there's initial penetration by a male? Says the Gemara, Hama'ara b'zuchur? What do you mean? Mishkavei isha ksibba. It says like the sleepings of a woman. And since we know that by regular relations with a woman is considered actual bia, it surely is that way by homosexuality too. Rav Miller once said in a shir that there was a great tragedy that a dentist fooled around with a married woman. And he thought that he really didn't do anything to her. And they asked her to marry a woman on her husband. It was a great tragedy. They ruled it ma'ara, they ruled it initial penetration, and they asked her on her husband forever. This is not no small stuff.
There were 8 in there?
There were 8 of them, yeah. What was the din if somebody has an initial penetration with an animal? Look at the look of interest on Marshall's face as Reb Rosenberg comes into our 30th Zoomer of the evening, and
How did I get caught up in this one?
I don't know, Marshall. I don't know.
Marshall, enough views last night, okay? You can come forward.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, it's funny that he was in the zoo last night. That's what was funny. It's funny.
There was a case in Chicago where a guy was doing that in the zoo.
Somebody told me that they saw Marshall in the zoo last night, and it was after hours yet.
Yeah, I'm the one that goes around with the broom and the shovel.
I got a call. Initial penetration with an animal, what's the din? And again, I want to tell you, we're sitting here, and your wife says, okay, so what did you learn by Rabbi Weiss last night? It's very interesting. For a long time, my wife and I were in isolation COVID. And she heard the Daf Yomi every night. And there were some of these Gemaras. And she said, men learn very strange things. Men learn very strange things. But the truth of the...
Think about the ones who wrote it all down years ago.
The truth of the matter is that in all these things, it's lahagdil Torah ulhadira. So we learn that we're not going to have penetration with an animal, initial penetration. So normally we wouldn't get any credit for it. The fact that it's usher and we abstain from it gives us credit for it. That's what it means. Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu l'zaka, says Yisrael, Lefikach herbem Torah mitzvahs. So now Mark is going to go to sleep tonight, and he's going to say, I'm adding to my list of accomplishments that I didn't have initial penetration with the dog. You know, he's going to add this to his accomplishments. It's not a small thing. The Rabbi Shalom wanted to give us more schusen. What's the din of initial penetration with an animal? Well, Amalei im eino inyan lahara dichsiva gabe akos avivachos imay. Deloit tzricha, it didn't have to say by a father's sister or a mother's sister initial penetration, the iskish lahara denida, because it's juxtaposed to initial penetration by a nida, to neo inyan lahara de behema, that even for initial penetration for behema, there is skila, there is stoning. Now the question is, why would we learn out behema from achos isha? You see, achos, not achos, achos aviv and achos imay are isurei koros. So, lamali d'chsiv behema mechayve mises bezdini. Bestiality is stoning. Lamali d'chsiv laharadi dog abe chayve krisis. Why does it say its penetration by those that are just chayv koros? Lichtave gabe chayve mises bezdin. V'ligmar chayve mises bezdin mechayve mises bezdin. It's a very unusual question. Gemara says, okay, you have a yitur, you have something extra, and it's coming to teach me initial penetration by behemoth. But why did you say the superfluous word by chayve krisis, which are not similar to bestiality, which is a chayve mises bezdin, which is chayve for stoning? Why didn't you put the superfluous word by another mises bezdin? Says the Gemara, it's a good question. We like the question. But hoyo the kule kra the drasha hu the asi, since that pasuk, every detail of it was superfluous, so they put this lesson there also. Ksivinami milsa the drasha. In other words, that was already anyway a superfluous pasuk, so they put other information there also. Now here's where we needed Barry. This is a new definition of a pretzel. Boy minei Rav Achadvoy ba'amim Rav Sheishes hamare ba'atzmoi mao. If somebody has initial penetration with himself, what's the din? Amalei, so he says to him, kabaston. You're just being a tumler. You're just making a tumult. Now, Rav Ashi explains. Amar Rav Ashi, Maiti Boilach. What's the question? Bikushi loy mishkachasla. If the aver is erect, it can't get from the front to the back. If it's erect, it's just not possible. Ki mishlachasla b'mishamish. When it's soft, it could be brought to the back. But the question is there initial penetration when it's soft or only when it's hard? So the mandama mishamish meis barayis potter, the one that says if it's soft you're potter, so hacha potter, Barry would be potter. Or the mandama chayiv, and the one that says it's chayiv, hacha mechayiv. The mandama chayiv, hacha mechayiv, and you know what? Barry would be chayiv twice. So if he did it b'shoigeg, he would have to bring two chatois. One for being the passive participant and one for being the active participant. Right? Barry didn't realize that. Says the Gemara, maybe he wouldn't have done it. Hacha mechayiv tarte, mechayiv ha-shoichev, or mechayiv ha-nishkav. It's chayiv for the active participant and the passive participant. Boy mi name Rav Sheishes. So now we know that the animal that's the subject of the bestiality is killed. And the Mishnah says two reasons. One reason is takala, because since it caused the death of someone, we got to get rid of it. It shouldn't cause the death of someone else. And the other is kloin. People will say, you see that animal? Shimshon was put to death because of that animal. And it would bring shame. So two reasons. The nafkamina would be, what happens if a guy sleeps with an animal? Now, a guy, it's one of the 7 Noahide laws, bestiality. It's considered immorality. So there is, for that reason, we should put the animal to death because it caused the downfall of a human being. But shame, there was no shame because the goyim don't have shame. They don't have shame. So, by my name Rav Sheish is oivik kechavim abal behema mao. A guy that sleeps with an animal, what do we do with the animal? Takala v'kalain beinan. Do we need the reason that it brought a downfall and it brought shame? V'acha takala ika, there is a downfall, klain leka. There's no shame. Because the idolaters do this, then there's no degradation. Oy dilma takala afal pisha ein klain, since it brought a downfall of a human being, we put it to death even though there's no shame. So now the Gemara is going to try to bring a proof from the Mishnah. Amar Rav Sheshes Tanitua Ma'ilanos. First he brings us another act. We know we burned the Asherah, the idolatrous tree. Ma'ilanos she'ein oichlin ve'ein shoysin ve'ein merichin. Madach, trees that don't eat, that don't drink, that don't smell, they don't have feelings. Amr Torah hashreis sreif v'chalei, destroy, burn, and eradicate. Hayilubala adam takalal yadan, since people suffered through them. Hamases chaveiroi midarchei chaim l'darchei misa, somebody who subverts his friend from the path of life to the path of death, surely should be destroyed. So we see that we destroy something just because it brings a takala, without the reason of koloin. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, then if a guy bows down to an animal, we should kill the animal. Because when a guy bows down to an animal, the animal causes the guy to be put to death. And the guy has the mitzvah of belief in one God. That's one of the 7 Noahide laws. So if a guy bows down to an animal, the animal should be put to death, but that's not the halacha. The animal should become aser or mikdala. It should be executed. Now, if that's true, if a yid bows down to an animal, the animal doesn't become aser, and it's not to death. And I'll tell you how we learn this. Very interesting from where we learn this. We learn this. We learn this from a drasha by Karbonis. The pasuk says mina boker, that you could only take from cattle and not all cattle. Cattle that is cattle that is worshipped is disqualified for use of a carbon. Now, from the fact that the Torah says it can't be used as a carbon, that means that it's not killed and it's not aser. Because if it was killed and it's aser, we don't have to say it's no good for a carbon. So is there anything aser? Says the Gemara, well, Yisrael gufei litzer. Let's say that if a Yisrael himself bows down to an animal, it should also be aser. Midei dahavi aravia. It should be the same thing as bestiality. An animal that commits bestiality is aser. So the Gemara says, Amar Abaya, Zeh kloinoi meruba. When with bestiality there's a great disgrace. V'zeh kloinoi muat. And idolatry, worshipping the animal, it's a small disgrace. The animal doesn't become forbidden, it's not put to death, it's only forbidden for a carbon. Yet the Gemara says, but v'hari ilonois te'ein kloinon meruba, a tree that doesn't have a lot of disgrace, after destroy it, burn it, and eradicate it. Now there's no tzar balichaim. The balichaim kamrina. Living animals, we don't do it unless it's a very great disgrace because it's tzar balichaim. A tree doesn't have the same tzar balichaim. The chas rachman alayu, and we welcome in Richard Rosenzweig for our 31st Zoomer of the evening. Richard, we're holding by Rava Amar. We're holding by Rava Amar, which is 4 lines from the bottom of Nun Hey Amud Aleph. Rava Amar, Amra Torah Behema Nenis Me'aveira, the animal which derives pleasure from the Aveira, there is pleasure from the bestiality, Teorek. The tree, the animal that's worshipped, who doesn't derive benefit, is not put to death. The Gemara is going to come back at Rava, but the tree didn't get any benefit. Varilana is the Einenim Aveira, the Asherah, which doesn't benefit, V'amra Torah, Hashkei, Sroif, the Chalei, destroy, burn, and eradicate. So the Gemara now counters, but Balichaim Kamrinan, by animals where there's no pleasure, there Tzar Balichaim kicks in. The Chos Rachman Alayu, Hashem has mercy. So now let's go back to our question that we're researching. We're researching the question about what happens if there's 2 reasons to put an animal to death when it has bestiality. One is because it caused a man to sin, and the second is because people will say that's the animal that brought so-and-so's death, and there's disgrace. And we said that, do we need both reasons? The nafkamina would be a guy that sleeps with an animal. The guy is put to death, so the animal brought a takala, but there's no degradation because the Goyim do this all the time, and therefore there's no degradation. So the Gemara now pursues this again, Tajma. Really good to have 31 Zoomers here with us this evening. Remember, Rabbi say, I put up on the post Aaron Swade's number. Aaron Swade is sitting Shiva for the loss of his sister. He's not taking personal visits, but you may call him, and I'm sure he'll be very glad to hear your voice. Most people. He actually told me who shouldn't call him, but you probably figured it out already. So the Gemara says, Toshma, Dover Achar, another reason, Shaloite behema iveris b'shuk, that the animals shouldn't be passing in the market, v'yoimru, and they'll say, Zui sheniskel ploini al yoda. This is the animal that so-and-so was stoned because of. And now, by the way, we must know, it shouldn't slip by us that we're being sensitive to the feelings of a man that committed bestiality. A man that didn't have much shame. But we're being sensitive of the feelings of a man that committed bestiality. It's important to realize that. This is a theme that we have in Chazal. We know that the Bilam's donkey died, so that people shouldn't say, this is the donkey that bested Bilam. Now, we're being concerned about the man that wanted to curse Gans Klal Yisrael? Yeah, we'll be sensitive of everybody's feelings. Sensitive. Right, Marshall? Everybody's feelings, right? Right? Everybody's feelings.
He himself had
Except mine.
No, not Chas v'shalom. Everybody loves you, Marshall. There's no question about it.
Question about that with Bilam's donkey. I mean, it's in Farish in the Chumash. So the fact that everybody knows what happened, that already.
Yeah, everybody knows what happened, but if the donkey passes by, it raises the subject.
So to a different level.
Right, it raises the subject. It brings it to a heightened awareness.
Another question about that, if I could.
What?
So we have some clark we don't do.
He was ashamed. He was ashamed. Here he is, a Navi, and he didn't know what the donkey knew. He was very ashamed.
Okay. What about the man who commits bestiality? He doesn't have shame on it.
Also, when you found out the dog.
So a guy doesn't. A yid does.
I don't think that's what Bilam was ashamed of.
Huh?
I don't think that's what Bilam was ashamed of.
No, that's one of the things that he was ashamed of.
He
That
had bigger problems than that.
well, the fact that he slept with the donkey, maybe not everybody knew.
I think the donkey said.
No, the donkey said, "You're the one that I was with from always." That's illusions. But the fact that the donkey knew, here he is, he's supposed to be the big prophet, and the donkey saw the Malach and he didn't. That was... But anyway, as Marshall says, stop donkeying around over here and let's get moving.
It's howdy doody time.
Is it really?
Now, Toshma, Dovaracha, Shaloite Behema Iveris Bishuk, that the animals shouldn't be passing through the market for Yomru, and people will say, Zui Sheniskel Ploini Al Yoda. This is the animal that so-and-so was stoned by it. Now, it says, it says over here, a lashon that implies both. Number one, Zui Sheniskel. This is the cause of the person being stoned. So that's the reason of takala. And Al Yada, through her, raising awareness and making a disgrace. So, my love, mid the Sefer takala ukloin, since the Sefer of the Mishnah is raising the issue of both takala, that it caused the death, and disgrace, Reisha, the Reisha that says the reason that it brought a person's downfall, must be talking about takala b'loy klein. Must be talking about only where you have one of the two variables. And what would be the case of takala b'loy klein, a downfall without disgrace? That would be where the animal slept with a guy. Says the Gemara, no. The Reisha could be talking about when you have a different variable. Like Sefer takala klein, Reisha, the Reisha, as we welcome in Avram Shenkman, Avram, it's good to have you. As we're holding, I think Avram did some hopping to Shiurim. It was by us, by Mariv, making our Mariv. Then I think he ran to one shir, and now he's coming to another shir hopping. So, Avram, it's great to have you. And we're holding 3 lines from the top of Nun Hey Amid Beis, 55b. Loi Sefer Takala Klein, we have both. Reisha Kamash Malon Afilu Klein Beloy Takala, where there's shame without disgrace. Now, what's an example of shame without disgrace? Nami Mechayve, the animal is put to death. Ve'echi Dami Yisrael Abal Behema B'Shoigeg, where Yisrael sleeps with an animal unwittingly. And so there you have, it's embarrassing, but there's no takala. We don't put the Yisrael to death. It's b'shoigeg. Okay, but the boy Rav Amnuna, Yisrael abala behema b'shoigeg, a Yisrael that has an unwitting relation with a behema mao. Takala kloin ba'inan. You need that somebody had to have a downfall and also disgrace. V'acha kloin ika, here it is degrading, but takala leka, because we don't put to death the man. Oidoma klein, as long as there's disgrace, apple pishain takala, we put the animal to death. Rav Yosef Tajma Bas Shalashon Yom Echad Miskadeshes Bebia. A girl that's 3 years and 1 day, she's ru'uya lebia, she's fit to have intercourse, so therefore she could be mikadeshes bebia, she could be betrothed with bia. Vim ba leha yavim, and if, let's say, Ruvain had a wife who was 3.5, and he died childless, obviously childless, if Shimon, the brother, sleeps with her, he acquires her, because it's considered a bia to be acquire is Yavama. And if she's a married woman, and somebody sleeps with her, he's chayav for adultery, because it's considered a bia. And if she's a menstruant, she's 3.5, and she's a menstruant, and somebody sleeps with her, umetama es boala, the din is, umetama es boala, if she's a menstruant and she's 3.5, now a nida is an avatuma. A nida, when she lies on a bed, she makes that bed an avatuma. The clothing that she wears is a rishon tumah. When a man sleeps with her, matame es bayala, she, if she's more than 3 years old, is matame the one that sleeps with her, libtame mishkav taktain, that he's matame a bed that he lies upon, ke'elyon shows up, like what she wears. In other words, he'll be matame or a bed as a rishon, like the clothing of his Zav.
Is that possible for a girl who's 3 years old to be a nida?
Even a day-old child could be a nida. That's a Gemara.
They don't need puberty?
No. She could bleed. I mean, it's a condition, but she could bleed. Nisis l'kayin, if this 3-year-old marries a kayin, so chelas betruma, it allows her to eat truma. Ba'aleh echad min apsulib, if someone who is forbidden to her sleeps with her, let's say a mamzer sleeps with her, or a nasin sleeps with her, pasla min akuna, since her bia is a valid bia, he disqualifies her from marrying a kain and disqualifies her from eating truma. V'im ba'aleh echad mikol ha'aroyos ha'amuros b'Torah, if, let's say, her father sleeps with her, mumsin al yada, he's executed. Of course, he patura, because she's under bas mitzvah, she's part of mikol ha'inshim sheb'Torah. Now it says over here, echad mikol ha'aroyos. Gemara assumes that echad mikol ha'aroyos v'afilu b'beima. Even if she sleeps with an animal, the animal is put to death. But wait a second. There's no takala. It didn't cause the takala because she's not put to death. The kloinika, there's degradation. Takala leka. There's no takala. V'kitani mumsin al yada. Says the Gemara, you know what? Really, it brought about her downfall. Because Kevan the Mezidahi, since she did it willfully, Takolo Namiyika, it is considered a downfall. Just that the Torah has mercy and doesn't put her to death because she's underage. Rahmanu dechas Allah, and it's the Torah has mercy on her, but Allah didachas, it only has mercy on her. Now, by the way, I'm sure that the Lamdish Svarim have a field day over here, because this Gemara seems to impute. Is that a good usage of the word impute?
Once you finish the sentence, we'll know.
The Gemara seems to impute a willful act to a 3-year-old in one day. And that's a very big chiddush. Because usually we say that a cotton and a ketana are lav bardasi. So here we're implying that there is das enough that it should be considered a takala for them, if not that the Rebbeinu Shalom had mercy. It's a very big chiddush. Amarava, Tajma, this is going to be the same idea. And by the way, Rabbi said again, you shouldn't feel, if I'm going to miss a Gemara, I wouldn't have minded missing this daf. What do I have to learn it for? It's wrong. To the contrary, what are we laying on Mincha on Yom Kippur? On Mincha on Yom Kippur, we lay the Parsha of Arayos. What are we laying the Parsha of Arayos on Yom Kippur for? Because it's something that nobody gets wrong. It's a big thing to learn something that nobody gets wrong. So we're learning something, finally we're learning something that nobody gets wrong. Says the Gemara, Tajma.
Not according to Marshall, though, Rabbi White.
Tajma, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Tajma,
Fairies and plexiglass.
yeah, Tajma, Ben Tesha Shanim V'Yom Echad, a 9-year-old, and one day, that's a boy that's roy to have bia. Habal Yevimtai, if he sleeps with his Yevimtai, that means Ruvain was married to Sarah, Ruvain died, Sarah was childless, Shimon was the brother-in-law. If he sleeps with her, Kana, he fulfills the mitzvah of Yibam. Ve'ena nice and get, of course he cannot dissolve the relationship with a get at Sheyagdol until he becomes bar mitzvah. Umatama Kanida, and the din is that if he sleeps at 9-year-old with the nida, so then he will be metame like the woman that he slept with, letame mishkav tachta and kelyan, to make the bed that he sleeps on like the elyon of a zav, like a rishon, like what a zav wears. Paisel, if he's a mamzer, or not a mamzer even, if he's a Yisrael that marries a bas kohen, he disqualifies her from eating truma, because now she's married to Yisrael, she can't eat truma anymore. Ve'ena machal, if he's a kohen and she's a Yisraelis, since he's not yet of age, he cannot cause her to eat truma. And if he sleeps with an animal, he disqualifies that animal from being brought as a carbon. V'niskeles al yada, and it's stoned because of his act of bestiality. V'imbal achas b'kol ha'arayos ha'amuros b'Torah, and if he sleeps, let's say, with a married woman. So the married woman is put to death because of him. Mumsin al yadai. But we see here that when he sleeps with an animal, we execute the animal. Even though there's only degradation, there's no takala because we don't put him to death because he's not bamitzin yet. So here the Gemara says the same answer. That since he's already 9, when he did it willfully, really he deserves to die. So it's a takala. It already caused a takala. Just the Rabbeinu Shalom had mercy on him. Kevin Amezidu takala namiyika. It's considered like it was something that caused a sin of death. Rachmanu dechasilvei. And the Torah had mercy on him because he wasn't of age yet and they don't put him to death. Alei deichas rachman, on him the Torah has rachmanis. Abahem aleichas rachman. Tajma. Davaracha. Shaloitei behema iveris b'shuk, that the animal shouldn't be passing in the street. V'yomer zui shenisko ploin al yad. My lav mid the sefer takala kloin, since the sefer is both reasons, that zui shenisko, this is what caused skila, takala, and also ploini al yada, that is shame. My lav mid the sefer takala kloin, reisha kloin b'lei takala. The Reish is talking about a case of shame without takala, which would be a case of b'shiali b'shaygeg. Ve'echidami yisrael abal behema b'shaygeg, which doesn't cause him to be killed, but does cause him degradation. So the Gemara says, no, maybe it's talking about the other way, where there's takana without klein, and that's a guy that sleeps with an animal. Lei sefer takana klein, Reish takala b'loi klein, downfall without shame, and that's a case of echidami. A guy that sleeps with an animal. So therefore the Gemara leaves unresolved what happens when we have one of the two variables. What happens if there's shame but no takala? And that would be a case where a man does bishiali with an animal b'shoigeg. He's not put to death, but there is shame. Or the other way around. What if there is takala without degradation, and that's a guy that sleeps with an animal? There is takala because he's put to death, but there's no degradation because it's normal for a guy. You know what? I really don't want to end the night with having spent the entire night on a sordid topic. So I want to share with you a thought. We just learned the parsha of Kriyas Yamsuf, and we know that at the Yamsuf, the Malachim wanted to sing, and Hashem silenced them. This is a very rare thing. The Malachim are always singing, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. We say it, V'Ifanim v'Chayes HaKodesh. Barash Gadol, with a big rash. They're always singing. So at the Yamsuf, they want the Bikshu Malachi Asharish Leimer Shira. And the Rabbeinu Shalom said, Ma'aseh Yadai Tovim B'Yam, my handiwork is drowning at the sea, V'atem Oimrim Shira, and you want to sing? So we all know the question, what do you mean? It says, Ba'avod Risham Rina, when the wicked perish, it's song. Ba'avod Risham Rina, we know that when Haman bent down to help Mordechai up on the horse, Mordechai kicked him. And Haman asked him why, and he told him, Ba'avod Risham Rina. And we know we did sing. Oz Yashem Aisha, B'nai Yisrael, Sashir Azais, we're singing it throughout the millennia. So what Why were the malachim silence? So I remember I was at the shir. Either I was at the shir or I listened to the tape and it was like I was at the shir. I remember when the Castellano was a mafia don. Shelley remembers Castellano, right? I remember when he was rubbed out. So somebody asked Rav Miller, what do we say about the Castellano rub out? So Rav Miller said, what do you mean, what do we say? It's a big, big Kiddush Hashem. It says, Vishilumas Rishoyim Tireh. You should see the payment of the wicked. It strengthens your belief in Schar Vaynish. So therefore, a human being that sees the 9 million Egyptians who tortured the Yidden get punished, that's something to sing about. Because it strengthens our belief in Schar Vaynish. But Malachim, they don't need strengthening. They don't have a Yetzer Hara. They don't have a Chesaron in Emunah. So then this is just people suffering. You don't sing. That's the famous teretz. But Rab Shmuel Shmelkem in Nikolsburg says a different pshat. Real fascinating drush. It says that when Sanhedrin came to Yerushalayim with over 100,000 generals, he had such a massive army. Chizkiyahu didn't have an army. They didn't have an army. Imagine if there would be the Arabs and Eretz Yisrael didn't have an army. Didn't have an army. So what did the Rebbeinu Shalom do? Overnight, the Rebbeinu Shalom allowed the Sanhedrin and his hordes to hear the Malachim saying Shira. And when they heard the Shira, they died. So says Reb Shmuel Shmelkem in Nikolsburg, at the Yamsuf, Bikshu Malachi Asharis Leimer Shira. They wanted to say the Shira and the Egyptians should die. Remember we said we couldn't touch them because we had Akaras HaTayv. So they said let them hear our Shira and die. So what did Hashem answer? Ma'aseh Yodai Tovu B'Yam. They drowned my Jews. They need me to connect me in the water. Shira? And you want to kill them with Shira? That's how me to connect me. That's the way the great Reb Shmuel Shmelkem in Nikolsburg learns Pshat. Anyway, we did the Bishniyamis already, Yeshuas. We want to thank you very much for joining us and have a wonderful evening.